Hi, I'm Brandon Bowers, pastor of New Life Church, located in Locust, North Carolina. Now, I wanted to say thanks for stopping by and checking out our YouTube channel. I hope that today's message is both encouraging and challenging to you in your walk with Christ. If you're in our area sometime, we would love to have you come check out one of our services, each and every Sunday at 8:45, 10:15, and 11:45. We'd love to have you come out. And I hope that you enjoy today's message.
Well, all of you who happened to be gone somewhere else last week, maybe you're at the beach or the lake or something, we did have a corporate agreement. We took the first vote ever in like the history of New Life to sort of scorn you this morning. However, you can thank me. I did pastoral veto. Said we're not going to have any of that. It's not the kind of church we are. We're glad you're back. We missed you. We love you, and hope you missed us. And glad you're back. So I was just standing back there, and I know like when Evan or whoever might be leading us on a Sunday morning, I ask you like to raise your hands and stuff like that. It's sort of awkward at first, right? If you don't do that much, it's sort of awkward, and you feel funny doing it. Here's the thing: the more you do it, the easier it gets, the less awkward it feels. And I'm standing back there and I watch you guys worship and really get into things, and it just does my heart good. And I just feel like I need to remind you sometimes just how much I love you as your pastor. It's just a pleasure to be called the pastor of this church, and nowhere else on the planet Earth would I rather be on Sunday morning than right here with you guys. And so thank you. That's not for me, that's for you. That's how awesome you are. But everybody has to take vacation. Listen, I need one, and I'll take one. But when I'm gone, I'm going to be thinking, man, wish we was at New Life, you know. And I even go to church on vacation, and I always compare it. This place ain't nothing compared to our church. I mean, whatever, you know. So just want to remind you, hey, praise, worship God, raise your hands. It's like when I taught my daughter, Elin, how to ride her bike. It was just a month or so ago. Took her training wheels off, and she'd wobble down the road a little bit and put her feet down. It was a little weird for her at first. It was awkward. I was like, well, just keep doing it. Just keep trying. The next day, man, down the road, and she's riding all over the neighborhood. So just keep trying and just keep praising God, and the awkwardness will wear off, and you'll just absolutely love it. So anyway, enough with that. But we're talking about gentlemen, entering into a brand new series today. And I read somewhere recently that being male is a matter of birth, being a man is a matter of time, but being a gentleman is a matter of choice. It's something we need to think about. And what are some of the characteristics? What are some of the traits and the qualities of a true gentleman? Now, if you were to go online and search that, you're going to come up with a sort of a mind-numbing amount of answers and lists and catalogs and magazines that say this, and online opinions and bloggers, and everybody has their own idea of what it is to be a gentleman. And so I wrote down some of these. I wanted to share them with you. Some of them are absolutely dead on. They're true, I agree with. Some of them are just funny, and I thought we needed to include that just to lighten the air a little bit. But here's 10 things right quick that help us understand and describe a true gentleman. Number one, a true gentleman makes good eye contact when talking to someone. Not afraid to look somebody in the eyes. Number two, a true gentleman calls his mom even if he has to set a Google reminder to tell him to do so. Like, that's me. I need that. I got to work on that. Truly, I do. Call mom every now and then. Number three, a true gentleman holds the door for everyone simply because it's the nice thing to do. Number four, I love this one. A gentleman owns and is able to sufficiently rock at least one suit. Now, I don't do that often, but when I do, I look good. I'm just going to tell you. Number five, a gentleman has mastered a good handshake. Don't come in here all limp-wristed and weak. Man, put something into it. Jonathan's got that one down pat. He's not here today, but you know it if he was. Did somebody whistle? Oh, Perry's got one, absolutely. Number six, a true gentleman treats every woman with the same amount of respect as he would his own wife, mother, sister, or daughter. Remember that, guys. And for you who are maybe dating, thinking about dating in the near future, girls, remember this: a true gentleman pays for the meal, always. It just happens. That's what he does. If he doesn't, kick him to the curb. And when having that meal, remember this. Number 8, a true gentleman puts down his phone. He don't even need it. Just put it away. Don't even take it in with you. Number 9, a true gentleman watches his mouth. Be careful what you say. And then I added this one in it because I believe it and I think it's biblical, somewhere in the Bible somewhere. But a true gentleman is not a vegetarian. He's definitely a meat eater. So that sort of helps us describe what is a gentleman. And so we're entering into this series that we're calling, we've chosen to call this gentleman. And here's the thing I want us to focus on. While all these are fun and we could add so many more to them. Here's the thing I want us to focus on over the next few weeks. The fact is, you cannot spell gentleman without gentle. Can't spell gentleman without gentle. Because gentlemen are gentle men. This is a quality that we need to acquire and we need to develop in our lives. But here's the thing, ladies, I don't want you to check out on the next 3-4 weeks and think, well, this doesn't apply to me. We're talking about men. See, while I'm going to be speaking some things directly to the men over the next few weeks, gentleness is a quality that knows no gender boundaries. It is absolutely essential. It's necessary for every single one of us to cultivate in our lives. That's why Paul in Ephesians chapter 5, he mentioned gentleness in the list of qualities that describe the fruit of the Spirit. And what he's saying to us is that without gentleness, you and I cannot live a life that is completely controlled by the Spirit of God. Without gentleness, we will not be able to develop a sufficient and effective strategy against our sinful nature, the flesh. Without gentleness, it doesn't matter how much spiritual growth we experience and how many spiritual experiences we have. Without gentleness, we cannot become fully developed followers of Jesus. Just not going to happen. But yet, when we talk about gentleness, when we hear it, we think about it, we even take into account something that Jesus said in Matthew 5:5, where he said, the meek or the gentle will inherit the earth. We still want to push back on it. We still want to try to resist it. We want to avoid it because over the years we've just been inundated with this idea that meekness equals weakness, that those who are gentle are somehow powerless, they are cowardly, they are wimpy, they are soft. But let me ask you this. Would you consider Jesus to be powerless? When you think about Jesus, you think of a man who was weak, who was wimpy or soft? Absolutely not. That's not the way we view him. But yet, listen to what he said in Matthew 11:29. He says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle. I'm gentle and humble in heart. You'll find rest for your souls. Think about Moses in the Old Testament. Moses was a man of strength, a man of power, a man of influence. He was a man who faced down Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. He led the people of Israel through the wilderness for like 40 years, through the Red Sea on dry ground, doing all sorts of miracles, leading the people in successful military campaigns. But yet the Bible says about him in Numbers chapter 12, verse 3, that Moses was a humble man, more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth. Humility and gentleness cannot be separated. They go hand in hand. Now, I'm not saying that he was perfect. To be a gentle man or a gentle woman doesn't mean you're going to be perfect. Listen, Moses killed a guy, tried to bury his body so nobody would find out. That's not very gentle in the moment. But all in all, taking into account, and he had plenty of negative qualities and failures, things he could work on. But despite all of those, the Bible still considered him a gentle person. And I really don't know of anyone who, after reading the entire story of Moses, would walk away thinking, what a wimp. Like, that's not a kind of guy I want to be. He had a quality about him. With all the power, with all the influence, with the working of miracles, he still possessed a gentle quality about him that just pleased the heart of God, just like Jesus had. Jesus is the best example of strength and gentleness married together. It's just mind-blowing. One of the examples I just think about in the life and the ministry of Jesus was there at the end when he rides into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. That's what we call the Sunday before the crucifixion, Palm Sunday. Jesus rides into Jerusalem on a donkey. Now, he's the king. He's the Messiah. He's the long-awaited Savior of Israel. But he rides into Jerusalem on a donkey, expressing his gentleness. He's not there to push himself on anyone. He's not there to fight for any rights that he might have. He's not there to acquire a position. He's not there to demand people to surrender to him. He's not there to insist on fairness. He rides into town, gentle and humble, as if to say, my Father's in control. This is all okay. He's got this. I'm not worried a bit. Gentleness. But with all of that, even with all the evidence that would point to its importance and its necessity in our life, we still resist it, don't we? We still want to push back on it. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. I mean, one, just for the simple fact that it's just not natural. It doesn't come natural to us to be gentle. That's why to develop gentleness is an act of God. It's an act of grace and strength of His in our life, working in us and through us. You see, if it's up to our sinful nature, we're always going to want to push back. We're always going to want to be harsh and to demand our way and to look out for number one and really run over and bulldoze anybody who stands in the way. It's an act of God to develop gentleness. But number two, because it's not something that's natural to us, that means to develop it, to cultivate in our life, must be a choice. We got to decide this is something that's important for us. This is a quality that I need and I desire in my life. That's why Jesus said, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle. Gentleness is something that you learn, something that you have to decide to do. And that's why Paul, I believe, when he wrote Philippians chapter 4, verse 5, he said this, let your gentleness be evident to all. And that first word there is very key. Let your gentleness. It's a choice. You have to choose to let it show. You have to choose to reflect the gentleness of Christ in your life. It's not going to happen naturally. But you might have heard it said before in describing gentleness that gentleness is power under control. You harness power. But I like better the way John Maxwell described it in light of what Scripture teaches. He said that gentleness is not simply power under control. Gentleness is power under God's control. Gentleness is power that we've put under the control and the lordship of Jesus Christ. And with that in mind, he then outlines some components of a gentle person's life using the word power that must be under God's control. And I want to share those with you this morning. He said, first of all, this power is partly made up of our personality. Our personality under God's control will begin to help develop this idea, this trait of gentleness. And every single one of us in here, we have our own unique, God-given, one-of-a-kind personality. Some of us share similar qualities and traits, and we're sort of like-minded. We have similar personalities, but nobody in here is the same. There are no two identical people in this room. We're all different, and we've been given a different personality by God. But a gentle person has learned to take his or her unique personality and place it under the lordship and under the control of God so that God can mold them, can develop them, and shape them into the kind of person that He wants them to be. Now, that can be challenging. It can be very difficult for us because if we're just honest, most of us probably would say we got a pretty strong personality. We like who we are, and we like the way we are, and we're not really interested in changing anything about that. It makes me think about some of Jesus' closest disciples, 3 of them in particular, Peter, James, and John. These guys were men with very strong personalities, and they weren't interested at all in changing them, and they weren't very gentle men. Matter of fact, they were quite abrasive, impulsive. They got themselves in a lot of tight spots. But the fact is that their examples show us that God is patient with us even when there's something about us, say our personality, that isn't quite where it needs to be. He'll keep working on us as long as we'll surrender to Him to help us develop this trait. Like James and John, I remember in Luke chapter 9, Jesus gets rejected by the people of Samaria. When James and John, man, they get ticked about this. They're insulted. This is Jesus that they're talking about and that they're rejecting. And so they come up with Jesus and they said, listen, if you want us to, you just tell us. If you want us to, we'll call down fire from heaven and we'll destroy them all. Does that sound like a good idea? Hey, we'll just destroy the entire city. Jesus, you say the word, and tonight's menu will feature smoked Sumerian. Like, we'll do it. I'm serious. We'll do this. Just tell us. That's not very gentle, is it? Of course it isn't. Peter, he was much the same way. There's probably more instances of his arrogance and impulsiveness to be listed than we have time for. But one in particular, the night that Jesus was being betrayed in the Garden of Gethsemane. The soldiers came out to arrest Jesus, and as soon as one of them reached to take hold of him, Peter, he pulls out his sword and he lances off this guy's ear. Listen, I assure you, he was aiming for his head, but he missed and got his ear. Not very gentle. Not very gentle at all. But yet, Jesus kept working on them. Jesus was patient with them. He kept teaching them. He kept molding them. And all three of those guys, Peter, James, and John, all three of them became pillars of the first century church. They helped lay the foundation of the first church. Powerful, influential men, which proves that there's still hope for you, still hope for me. If we're not where we need to be, if our personality isn't where it needs to be, God is patient. And if we'll put who we are under His control and under His lordship, then He will mold us and to develop us into the kind of men, the kind of women that He desires us to be. But another component of the gentle person's life that we need to talk about here that's under God's control is their outlook. Their personality is under God's control, and their outlook. In other words, what they view as important, what they view as a priority is under God's control. Our outlook becomes His outlook, and His becomes ours. What God sees as important, what God sees as a priority becomes our priority. And so Paul wrote something like this in Philippians chapter 2, verse 4. He said, each of you should look not only to your own interest, but also to the interest of others. So what he's saying here, not only has gentle people put their personality under God's control, but they gain a new outlook on what's important, who's important. You see, when we're not being gentle people, it's usually numero uno is the one who's important. I'm looking out for me. But when I begin to develop gentleness in my life, I get a new outlook. I get a new perspective. And other people begin to take precedence in my life. They begin to take priority in my life. And I'm no longer consumed with what's best for me and advancing myself. But like Jesus, I'm interested in what's best for others. I'm interested in benefiting them. Peter mentioned something like this in 2 Peter chapter 1. So he's writing here to teach the believers how they can experience a greater amount of God's kindness, God's grace, and how they can get to know Him better. And he's given sort of a step-by-step process. And in verse 6 and 7, he includes in these steps, he says, learn to put aside your own desires so that you'll become patient and godly, gladly letting God have His way with you. In other words, gladly letting God change you and mold you. In verse 7, this will make possible the next step, which is for you to enjoy other people and to like them, and finally you'll be able to grow to love them deeply. See, when we're gentle men, we're gentle women, we gain a new outlook on who and what is important, and we'll put our desires to the side. We'll let God mold us into the kind of people He wants us to be, and usually what takes place is we begin to prioritize other people. And not only do we find ourselves actually liking people, but we grow to love them deeply. We're looking out for their best interests. And so like we're pointing out this morning, gentleness is power. It's power under God's control. Power that consists of our personality, our outlook, and what the letter W stands for is our words. Our words under God's control aids to gentleness. See, this is a huge one. Proverbs 15 verse 1 says that a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. See, seldom do we realize the impact of our words, especially in a negative situation. Seldom do we realize the impact of our words until it's too late. Till we've said something that hurts someone, that discourages them. We say something that we shouldn't, and we later regret it. Our words are extremely powerful, and over the years I've heard this said, that we're taught that the most dangerous things are the things that go in one ear and out the other. Like the things you don't pay attention to, that you should learn but you don't, that it's in one ear and out the other. But the reality is, the most dangerous things are those that go in one ear and then come out your mouth. Those are the most destructive things. And Jesus even mentioned something like this. It wasn't in these exact words, but he's talking to the Pharisees. He's debating them about this whole ceremonial hand washing because they were all upset because the disciples didn't wash their hands before they ate, and that defiles them in a law and ceremonial way. But he says, listen, Matthew 15 verse 11, what goes into someone's mouth does not defile them, but what comes out of their mouth, that's what defiles them. He's talking about the power of the words. And then his half-brother James, in James chapter 3, verse 6, he's talking about the power of words. And he says, the tongue is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of our body. It corrupts the whole body and sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. In verse 8 he says, but no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. In verse 10, out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. Our tongues, not talking about the muscle in our mouth, but our words. He says these, when they're not under God's control, are anything but gentle. Anything but gentle. In fact, James said our words are like a fire. A world of evil, restless evil. A deadly poison. However, he did mention there in verse 8 that no man, no woman can tame the tongue. However, by God's grace and through God's strength, we can harness the power of the tongue. And instead of speaking harsh and hurtful and judgmental words, when we put our words under God's control, we're then able to speak gentle words, helpful words, healing words. That's when we begin to really gain and possess true power that's under God's control. But then there's this other aspect of a person's life who's gentle, and that is their expectations. Their expectations. They put those under God's control. Expectations typically of others. How many of you in here have had someone in your life, I don't know how long it might have been, it could have been yesterday, but at least one person who's let you down? Let me go ahead. You had somebody let you down, hurt you, disappoint you? Sure. Every single one of us. We have this experience. When someone does that, when someone lets you down, when someone disappoints you and hurts you, how do you respond? Are you gentle? Are you patient? Are you forgiving? Or are you harsh? Are you abrasive? Are you judgmental? Do you hold grudges? I want you this week to take some time to read 1 Kings chapter 18 and 19. It's the story of Elijah and a great victory that he won against false prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. He faces these false prophets and he calls down fire from the true and living God. Great victory. But then in chapter 19, he enters into one of the darkest, most depressive moments in his life. And when that happens, God basically says, Elijah, go to your cave. Just go to your cave. It's like when Dad used to tell you, go to your room. Like you knew that wasn't the end of it because Dad was later going to come to your room and it wasn't going to be just to hang out with you. Go to your cave. And so Elijah went to this cave and he's probably in there just replaying all of his failures, his lack of faith, everything that he did wrong. He's rehearsing his lines. Okay, when God shows up, when the time comes, here's what I need to say. And here's what happened. This was miraculous. Absolutely amazing. While he was in this cave, all of a sudden, these powerful acts of nature began to take place. This strong wind, like a hurricane, gale force type wind, began to blow. Then there was this earthquake, just shook everything. And after the earthquake was this tremendous fire. And so naturally Elijah's thinking, God's got to be in this stuff. Like, I've angered him. I've failed God. So he's coming in vengeance and fire and wind, and he's shaking the earth. But you know what? God wasn't in any of those. Elijah didn't find God in the earthquake, in the wind, or in the fire. In 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 12, it says, after the fire came a gentle whisper, a gentle breeze. And it was there that Elijah found God. See, that should teach us something. Elijah had failed to meet God's expectations. He expected God to come and judge him, reprimand him, rebuke him, scold him, but he didn't. He came in a gentle breeze to encourage him, to love him, to forgive him, and to gently restore him. And see, we're not perfect people. We're going to fail to meet people's expectations. Other people are going to fail to meet our expectations. And when that happens, we have a choice. Are we going to scold them like a fire? We're going to come against them like a hurricane force wind? Are we going to just tear things apart? You know, pitch a fit like an earthquake? Is that where we're going to be? Or are we going to reflect God and gently restore them and love them and encourage them? This goes hand in hand with the last aspect of someone's life who is seeking to be a gentle person. Not only do they bring their expectations under God's control, they understand people are going to fail. But we bring our response under God's control. See, both of these go hand in hand, don't they? Our expectations of others, it's not that we don't have any, it's that when they fail to meet them, we can work with that. We don't have to judge them, we don't have to reprimand them, we don't have to tear them down, but we can restore them gently. See, that's all about our response, our treatment of others when they disappoint us, when they hurt us. And Jesus said, gentle people, meek people will inherit the earth. And what does that mean? It means that gentle people will be the ones who ultimately have the power. Gentle people will be the ones who ultimately call the shots. There's power in gentleness. And when people disappoint you and they hurt you, what they do doesn't have to determine your response and how you treat them. A gentle person, like I said, is being controlled by God. He will determine the response. He will determine how you treat them. But you don't know what they said about me. You don't know what that person did to me. I'm sure the Apostle Paul heard that all the time. And he wrote to Titus, one of his young pastors, in Titus chapter 3, verse 2, he says, I don't really know what someone said or what someone did, but teach the people this, to speak evil of no one, to avoid quarreling, to be gentle, and show perfect courtesy toward all people. But what about that person at work or at school who's all the time questioning and, trying to undermine your faith and what you believe and, taking cheap shots? What about them? Well, listen to what Peter said, 1 Peter 3:15. He says, in your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that you have. Listen, he's saying that it's okay to defend your faith. In fact, you should. Don't back down and cower away from the opportunity to stand up for Christ. He says, however, do it with gentleness and respect. See, in today's society, the mentality is get what you can, when you can, however you can. And living in this kind of society means that gentleness is usually looked at as a not so good quality. There's no real benefit in it. But here's the thing. As we've seen in Scripture today, and we're going to see through the rest of the series, gentleness is a God thing. And God things are powerful things. And that's something I want a part of my life. And so here's what I want to leave you with this morning. This is just a quote. Whether male or female, just remember this. That nothing is so strong as gentleness. Nothing so gentle as real strength. The gentleness is power under control. Not just any power, but power under God's control. Power that's made up of our personality, our outlook, our words, our expectations, and our response. So next week, what I want you to do, I'm sure we can all benefit from a series like this, talking about and developing gentleness, but I'm sure every single one of us know at least one person who might benefit as well. Invite them this week. So, hey, our church just started out a brand new series talking about gentleness, about how to become gentle men and gentle women. Why don't you come be a part of it? I think you'd love it. Next week, we're going to talk about the gains of gentleness. We've all heard this said, maybe even said it ourselves, when you've gotten a heavier load at work, more responsibilities, or someone's made an offer to you, you've asked the question, well, what's in it for me? Or someone's asked you, what's in it for me? And that's typically what we ask when it comes to gentleness. You know, I may say, you need to be a little more gentle, talking to a husband. Talking to a wife, you need to be a little more gentle. What's in it for me? What am I going to get out of it? Next week, I'll show you the gains of gentleness.